how was the actual ancient Indian education system, how they manage these all things, how they teach their students, and how they make this country very successful. Also, in this episode we will talk about how actually they made this whole country so innovative, so futuristic, that some very great innovations like Vimanika Shastra and even nuclear weapons has been invented at that time. This episode is going to get so much attention of yours if you are student or teacher. So let's continue this episode without wasting much time. So first of all, let's talk about what was the actual look of this ancient Indian education system. How you can see it from far. I mean, what was the actual the side view of this education system. So first of all, like the culture and tradition of India, the system of education also has a rich history of its own. So I will not talk all of that, but I will give you information majority which is provided by some great websites like Wikipedia and all this stuff. Majority of the system was actually influenced by the Hindu religion. The knowledge acquired by people of ancient time was passed on from generation to another and is reflected even in the teaching of today. So that's what happening at that time. In the olden days, there was no formal education in India. A father passed on knowledge primarily related to his occupation to his child. So that was what happening. So for example, one father is running one business of sweet shop, then his son most probably will continue to run that shop, or maybe he will open another sweet shop. So that's what happening at that time. Much later, two systems of education emerged, and these two systems are known as Vedic education system and Buddhist education system. So in this episode, we will talk about two major education systems from ancient India: Vedic education system and Buddhist education system. And as you know that Vedic education system has got more upgrades and updates. So if I don't use Buddhist education system word, then it means that I am giving information about Vedic education system. So I will not say again and again that this is the information of Vedic education system, but if there is an information related to Buddhist system, then I will tell you before saying or giving that information. The Vedic education system revolved around the Vedas, Vedangas and Upanishads, while the Buddhist education system preached the thoughts of the major Buddhist scholars. They were just researching, and the major Buddhist scholars releases their research papers and their knowledge which they acquired while meditating or some activities like that. So that was the difference between Vedic and Buddhist education system. The language of education was Sanskrit for Vedic education system and Pali for the Buddhist education system. Now let's talk about how child starts acquiring the education, or at which age they start providing education to the child. In the Vedic education system, a child starts his education at the age of 5. To mark this commencement, the Vidyarambha ceremony, which included worshipping goddess Saraswati and learning alphabets for the first time, was conducted for every single child who want to of course join this Vedic education system. So after joining this system, you have to leave your home and start living with the teacher or guru, and this whole ceremony called Upnayana. Where in the Buddhist system, a child started to give this education from the age of 8 with the ceremony called Pabajja or Prabrajya. Sorry if I am mispronouncing, but that's the complex word, but I tried to pronounce it. Unlike the Vedic system, the initiation ceremony could be practiced by boys of all castes, where in Vedic system, if you want to join this education system, then you must come from Brahmin family or Kastriya family or Vaisya family. So if you are lower class or middle class family, then you can't take that education. So which is very bad thing. I will say this is the darkest part of this education system. But in Buddhist system, there is no caste, there is no difference between people. They just teach everyone as same as others. So that was the very nice part of this Buddhist education system. After all of this, the child would leave home and go to live in a monastery under the guidance of his teacher or a monk in Buddhist education system. Now let's talk about what was the actual unique points of this ancient education systems. In ancient times, the education system was very isolated from governments and society and all these things, because the education system is not connected with state government or society, which means that anyone could not interfere with the curriculum and the administration of this education institute or anything. By the way, it's quite interesting to know that there were no fees was charged for education. In fact, the teacher took care of everything, including food, clothing and housing. That was actually a nice point, how they just not charging the fees for education, and which is actually very nice thing. According to this system, physical labor was of utmost importance. So even if a child was interested in acquiring philosophical knowledge, he would still have to do some manual work every day. So they teach you everything which can be useful in your daily life, like collecting woods or making some basic foods and all this stuff. And because of this activity, they actually get involved in some very major activities which we were not taught in even today's time, like cooking and basic stuff. One of the most interesting part of this education was the debates and discussions, because they were actually part of this education even in ancient times. They thought that debates and discussions has to be organized, because it just creates different kind of mindset, different kind of skill set. It can create some innovative answers and innovative mindset. So that was the whole concept of this education system. Now, as we are talking lots of things about this education system, you know that there were actually different kind of education for women at ancient times. And by the means of difference, I am saying that the extra education was provided to women. I will give you some information about that. As I told you that education for women was quite important in ancient India. They were trained in housekeeping as well as in dancing and music. Girls also had to conduct the Upnayana ceremony. Educated women were divided into two classes. One of the classes provides education according to their preference. If women want to get married after completing their education, then they will get trained differently. Or if women want to get never married in her life and continue her research or studying journey, then she will taught differently. So that was the whole education concept at that time. Vedas and Vedangas were taught to women too, but they were just limited to religious songs and poems necessary for rituals. It's little bit dark part of that education system. Some notable Vedic and Upanishads women scholars were Apala Indrani, Gargi, Maitri. So they were quite popular at that time. So these were the women who are so popular for their knowledge. Now let's talk about what were the actually subjects of this education system, what they teach in the schools and institutes. Both Vedic and Buddhist system of education had different subjects to study. The Vedic education comprised of the 4 Vedas and 6 Vedangas, also which includes Upanishads, the Tarkasastra, Puranas, and much more. So these were the basic subjects of teaching in different institutes and schoolings. The main subjects in Buddhist system were the 3 Pitakas, which includes Vinaya, Abhidhamma, and Sutta. The most recognized, these were the most recognized work of all 18 Buddhism schools. Certain other subjects common to both the system, like arithmetic, military science, law, performing arts, ethics and arts and architectures, etc. So these were the subjects. Now let's talk about how they teach their students. What was the actual method of teaching? So we'll get into that topic. Though teaching in groups was very common back then, but also students were taught individually by their teachers based on their capabilities and aptitudes. Oral recitation was the basic medium of imparting knowledge at that particular time. They used to provide knowledge by storytelling, critical analysis, practical studies, and seminars and all this stuff. For many hours, daily students would repeat verses after verses of the Vedas till they attain mastery of at least one of them. So that was the time where they used to memorize all this stuff. To ensure correctness of memory, the hymns were taught in more than one way, so that they just can't mistake in any verse. At that time, princes were taught in a different way in all the manifold sciences to make them fit for government, and the education for lower caste religions and lower caste peoples, it was banned. The boys learned the trade through their fathers while girls remain uneducated, which I told you that very dark part of that particular education system. Now let's talk about why India was a leading education center at that particular time. Varanasi was famous for its religious teaching. At Varanasi there were about 500 students and a number of teachers available at that time. There were also universities at Taxila and Ujjain. They were centers for learning medicine, mathematics and astronomy. In the south, Kanchi became an important center of learning. Then there was Vallabhi, Nalanda and Vikramshila. So these three were very popular and big institute at that time. Taxila was known for its secular studies. Some cities become renowned because of their teachers. It is interesting to note that in Taxila, even married people were admitted as a student, which is very great thing. At that time, there were very powerful peoples like Charak, Kautilya and Panini. They were used to teach their knowledge, their great knowledge to students. Even in today's time, their knowledge was given importance. Chanakya Niti written by Kautilya was so popular in even today's time. It is so popular that some very big businessmen and young generation is actually accepting it and acquiring the knowledge in today's time. The whole establishment was maintained by charitable people. Ideally, the teacher took no fee, but the student repaid his debt by their services to the teacher. So it's known as Guru Dakshina in Sanskrit. Universities like Taxila, Vikramshila and Nalanda was so famous for their different departments. For example, Nalanda was famous for Catholic and compulsion character and its department of logic, while Taxila was popular for medical school and chief learning center in 6th century at that time. Vikramshila was very popular for Tantric Buddhism, and by the Tantric means I am not saying that or what you are thinking about the Tantric knowledge is different. In the Tantra, there are lots of categories, and one of them is this whole concept of dark magic and all this thing. The excavation of the sites of Indus Valley civilization has brought to our notice is that the prevalence of written script that suggest people of that time had sufficient knowledge, and education must have played a huge part in shaping up their lives. So this was the information which we have, but unfortunately the script of that time has not been deciphered, so nothing can be told more about the education system prevalent during the Indus Valley civilization. Education in ancient India centered on three simple processes: Sravana, Manana and Nidyasana. In ancient India, the objective of knowledge was that it must result in realization of truth. So that was their main point of education. Hyun Sang was a student of Nalanda University, and according to him, one of the colleges had four-storied high structure, and it contains very high quality facilities like having very big library and all of that stuff. In Nalanda University, students from different countries like Tibet, China, Korea and Central Asia came to acquire knowledge, and they spread the fame of this Nalanda University to the world. Though Nalanda was primarily a Buddhist university, its curriculum included Hindu scriptures, philosophy and medicine also. So after all of this analysis and all of this text, we know that the education in ancient Indian time were very qualityful, very knowledgeable, very kind of philosophical in such a way that student can invent or innovate something in their life. So that was it for today's podcast. I hope you loved this one podcast also. That is it from my side. I will meet you in next podcast. Thank you.